Okay, hello everyone. Good to see you again. Welcome to the sixth and final webinar as part of the Liberty Comms Lab. This is the final one, final time we will all be in the room together before our summit next month, which we are very much looking forward to, and we're working very hard on preparing that and making sure we get the most value out of our time together. We've called this webinar Organizational Thinking. It will be an opportunity to tie up some loose ends and go over a few topics that did not fit neatly into some of the other webinars we've had. We've had key ones on key topics like op-eds and social media and so on. But there are a few things we're going to discuss today which did not neatly fit into any of those boxes, but I think we should discuss them just so that we know what we're doing with these tools and what the best practices are. But it's going to be a lot shorter than the other ones. I won't keep you a long time today, and we will have plenty of time towards the end. If you have any questions at all about the summit or about anything we've talked about over the past 6 weeks, the past six webinars rather, then this is a good opportunity to ask those questions. So feel free to put those in the chat box and I will come to them at the end. But for the time being, let's run through what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, we will discuss press releases because they didn't neatly fit into the things we've discussed before. We've talked, of course, about opinion campaigns in webinar number 4, and press releases are a bit more news than opinion. So we're going to discuss what their purpose is, whether we should actually use them, how they should fit into our, excuse me, into our campaigns, how we can get the maximum value out of them, and what purpose they can serve so that we don't rely on them too much. We will discuss ethics around PR and communications. Do we need to have an actual code of ethics? How can we ensure that we are maintaining our principles, that we are staying true to our values while also being very bold and confident in trying to move the needle for liberty in the world? We'll talk a bit about crisis comms, what happens when things go wrong, how should we react to major events, major negative news stories, that kind of thing. How can we make ourselves stronger and more resilient? And we will talk also about AI and to what extent we should incorporate AI tools into our comms workflow. Should you ever use AI to write articles, that kind of thing. So first of all, press releases. Now, I was reluctant to talk for too long about press releases, and I've kind of pushed it to the end here of the Liberty Comms Lab because I think that a lot of organizations rely too much on them, and it's very understandable. Think tanks are working with, limited budgets and limited time, and you can have a press release template that is quite quick and easy to send out to lots of journalists. But we have made opinion campaigns front and center with the Liberty Comms Lab. I hope I've at least started to convince you over the past few weeks that they are the way you make real impact in the world. Press releases are, of course, different. They do not involve putting your opinion out there, really. They involve giving comment or analysis or context to some news story that's going on. They are worse than opinion campaigns for a lot of specific reasons that I'm sure you could identify quite easily. For example, when you send a press release out, you have no control over how your quotes will be used, if they will be used. The ideal outcome from a press release is that a journalist writes a news report on whatever news story is happening, and then they quote you in maybe paragraph 5 or paragraph 6 of the story to say, oh yes, and these people reckon this, they have this opinion about that. So of course, that's helpful for the reader to give them broader context. If you're criticizing a policy in that capacity, that can be useful. It's certainly better than nothing, but it's no substitute for an opinion campaign because there will be the other side of the argument. There will be, a quote from the government minister defending the policy or whatever it is. You don't have the opportunity to go in depth and to really change people's minds and to really do all the things we've been talking about in recent weeks, where you translate things into languages people will understand and you link it to things in their lives and you say, look, this policy is hurting you because of this and this. You can't really do any of that with a press release. So I think the function of press releases for everyone on this call should be effectively to raise awareness. If you have something you just need to be people to be aware of, like the first step or like even before you begin a campaign, really. It's not really part of the campaign where you just need people to know that you've published a paper, for example, and then later you're going to use the ideas from that paper to write op-eds and to do social media content and whatever to try to change people's minds. So there should be a very limited function. So this is my reality check on the slide here. Don't rely on press releases. I think it's very understandable If you are counting the number of media hits you've had over a year, for example, a press release might seem like a more efficient way to get that number up, to get a larger number of media hits, because you can just write a quick one and send it out to maybe hundreds of journalists, and it only takes a couple of them to pick it up if they work for Associated Press or whatever, and then suddenly your quote appears in countless different media outlets and articles. But that does not really allow you to shape the conversation. If you have extra time to write a press release, then that's great. It's certainly not going to do any harm. But if you have a limited amount of time to work on a particular campaign and you really want to do as much as you can, press releases are not an efficient use of your time. This certainly should not be the first step, because each media hit you get with a press release is worth a lot less than an opinion-based media hit, than a proper opinion campaign. Having said that, with that caveat out of the way, there are situations where a press release is worth doing. So let's go through what writing a good one looks like and how to maintain that workflow. So first, of course, you will need people to send it to. You will need to have an email list, a list of email addresses of journalists to send it to. We talked in the last webinar about subscriptions to PR software like Cision, which I've named here. If you have something like that, then of course your lists will be there and they will be easy to update and keep on top of. If you don't, it will probably be in a spreadsheet. We've talked in previous webinars about where you can find journalist contacts and how to construct email addresses if you know their name and the format of the email and things like that. So I won't go over that in too much detail again. I will only say when it comes to an email list like this, it's important to maintain it. It's important to put the time in if it's going to be effective to making sure that it is up to date. In journalism, there's a lot of turnover in jobs. People leave, people quit, people move to a different role, new people come in. And so you want to make sure you are sending to the right people. You want to make sure you are sending to all of the people who might pick up the press release, but also not sending to the people who don't want it, to people who are, reporting on areas that are not relevant. You don't want to send your policy white paper press release to all the fashion and culture reporters, for example, for a number of reasons, not least the fact that that will increase the risk of your emails going to spam. If it just seems like you're sending out massive lists to people who don't open it or read it, then your email server is going to flag that. It's more likely to flag that as spam. And of course, the people on the other end, if they receive it and they never subscribe to it, they might report it as spam themselves, which does not help. So if you're going to do this, you want to have a list of emails that is definitely people who are going to be interested in what you've got to say and it's directly relevant to the work they are doing, and you have a realistic chance of them picking up the quote. When it comes to writing the press release itself, you should keep it nice and easy and simple, kind of the opposite of what we were talking about with opinion campaigns, with op-eds, where you want to have all these different takes in their buckets, you want to have all these creative ways of saying the same thing. Press release is the opposite. You should have a simple template that you create once, doesn't take very long, and then you use that template forever. And you just input the basic information of whatever it is you're talking about this time, and you send it out, so that you should keep the amount of time that press releases are taking away from your comms workflow as small as possible. And of course, as I said, don't spam people. This applies to the content as well. You should not be sending press releases every day or even every week. You should send them only when there is genuinely something major that is worth telling the world about, that genuinely might get picked up in news articles or is linked to a major news story that is happening anyway. For example, if you have a major white paper published on a big policy area that's in the news anyway, then that's the kind of thing that should trigger your desire to send a press release. This is what a press release should look like. This is a very, quick draft that I made that took about 2 minutes for Young Voices, imagining that we were going to send a press release about the Liberty Comms Lab, which we didn't. But just to give you an idea, they should look like this visually. You should have your contact details on one side and maybe your logo or an illustration or a photo of the author of the paper, for example, on the other side. You should have the release date underneath, or the embargo date, if you want to call it that, to make it really clear. This is similar to when we talked about broadcast media pitching for TV and radio, and we talked about how every single word in the email needs to be essential because we don't have any time to waste. The people who are reading these emails are going to read it very quickly, and so you want to make sure you have all the information very clearly at the top where they can see it. This applies here as well. When someone is looking at a press release and they're considering adding it to their news report, The first thing they're going to look for is the date, the embargo date of can I actually publish this or not. And so you want to have that right there at the top. Then you have a clear heading in bold, which is long enough to explain what the topic is, but not so long that someone's going to get lost. So in this case, I've written Young Voices launches Liberty Comms Lab, free training and consultancy for European think tanks. So again, it's kind of the opposite of what we were doing with op-eds. With op-eds, we were trying to put our opinion first and foremost, not have any unnecessary detail, make it bold and punchy. Here we're kind of doing the opposite. This is a bland explanation. It's like we're just getting the information across as quickly and efficiently and clearly as we can. If we just had Young Voices launches Liberty Comms Lab, that wouldn't be enough because the person reading this doesn't know what that is. So we're summarizing it in a few words without getting carried away. And then, of course, you have the actual body of the press release. This is, to be honest, even on the long side, it should even be shorter than this, really. Around 150 words is probably ideal for the content, or even less. It should have broadly this format. You should have the key bits that you hope will get quoted, that you hope will get picked up in short bullet point form like this, so that it's really easy for someone skimming the email to just jump straight to, okay, that the release date is applicable, that's the title, that's what we're talking about, that's an interesting point, I'll grab that. And they probably don't even read the rest of it. So you make it as easy as possible for them to travel, make that journey through the email, through the document. And then, of course, you are including the information that you want to be quoted, not any extra information that you think is unlikely to be quoted, because then that is just extra fluff that makes it more difficult for them to find the valuable stuff and reduces your chances of it getting picked up at all. Okay, so that was the crash course on press releases. We can talk more about that in the questions section if people want to. Let's move on to PR ethics. We want to build an ethical campaign framework. So what I mean by that is we want to make sure that all of your organizations are staying true to your principles. No one needs to sell out. No one needs to feel that they are doing something they're uncomfortable with or they don't want to do in order to achieve any of the goals we have talked about through the Liberty Comms Lab. Jorge, go ahead. Is your question about the press releases or the PR ethics?
It's about press releases.
Go for it.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that if we had to allocate time and we had the option to do a press release, for you it's just better to do some sort of opinion piece that within the opinion we say the same that we want to say with the press release. It's just that we frame it as an opinion piece. That would be your advice, or is it slightly different?
Essentially, yes, I'm saying opinion campaigns are superior to press releases because it gives you the opportunity to shape the conversation in a way that a press release does not. A press release is just you
Mhm.
adding a little bit of information to someone's news report. It's a much, much smaller effect. No one has ever changed the world or changed anyone's opinion
Right.
by having a press release, whereas having big, bold opinion campaigns, like we've talked about in the past, that go straight to someone and say, your life is being made worse by this policy, that's the kind of moving the needle for liberty energy that we want to see.
Right, and it's similar to, for example, when we want to update people about the work we're doing. It's rather just to put the effect and as we are writing an opinion piece, and not to say people, hey, we did this, and that.
That's a good question. So if it's stuff about your own organization and your programs, that probably is more suited to a press release. But then the risk there is you've got to convince people that it's worth including in their news report. So I
Uh-huh.
would still say that the best strategy for you is to lean towards opinion campaigns so that you build an organic audience, so that people read your opinionated articles and your opinionated content and they say, that guy's really interesting. I want to see what he's doing. I'm going to follow him on social media. I'm going to recognize his name next time I see an article and I'm going to read it. So that way they will learn more about you rather than the really direct and short term, here's what we did yesterday and I want to tell the world about it. That's much less likely to have any kind of long-term benefit. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And in my experience, is that you are completely right about the impact of each.
Great. I'm glad you agree. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Jorge. Let's move to campaign ethics, PR ethics. So, what do we mean by this? So, there are several things you can do for your workflow, which I would encourage you to do. I'm going to use Young Voices as an example because we have, of course, thought about this very carefully. We have a firewall between donors and output. So, what we mean by that is there is a solid block, there is a wall that cannot be broken between people who give money and the things we do and say in the media. So in Young Voices case, of course, we have lots of writers who take part in our programs. They never get to have a conversation with the donor where the donor says, here's what we really want to say, here's what we really care about. The donors never get to see articles before they are published. That kind of thing that we have written down and we've got in a code of ethics that is publicly available on our website and that is never ever broken, so that we can say with great confidence, if anyone asks us any questions, are you just doing paid PR work for some corporation? No, we're not. If people donate money to us, it's because they like the things we do. We do not sell out. It's not the other way around. We are not available for hire in exchange for donations. So there are a couple of reasons for this. The first one, of course, is if someone is hostile to you ideologically or politically, you want to be able to say with great confidence that there has been no improper, undue influence from donors on anything you are doing. And then, of course, more fundamentally, you want to be able to have confidence in the work you are doing. You should know that what you're doing is worthwhile in itself. It stands on its own two legs. You're doing it because you believe in it and because it's the right thing to do, not because someone paid you to do it. So, to that end, I would strongly recommend, if you don't have already, your organization should have a clear code of ethics, which doesn't have to be anything too fancy. It's basically just a list of rules of things we do and don't do. So, it might have, for example, the one I just mentioned from Young Voices, which is that donors never get to see any part of a media hit, such as an article, before it is published. They can see it when it's published and it's available to the world, just like anyone else. They don't get to see any drafts beforehand. I've included in the slide here a link to Young Voices Code of Ethics. So when I send the slides out later today, if you want to have a look, you can click on that link. But I think Code of Ethics, your basic principles of ethics, should A, be written down and available so that everyone on staff knows where they are and knows how to obey them. And they should be top of mind. They should be You should be very aware of them. You should never forget about them. I know, for example, when I'm doing Young Voices work, that I'm always thinking about this. And if any donor, and I have had that question plenty of times from donors where people have said, can I please see a draft? The answer is, I'm sorry, but no, we don't do that. Here's our code of ethics that explains why we don't do that. So if you want to pull your donation, that's totally fine. But we are not going to cross that line at any point. So this means that you can draw clear lines between what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, so you can avoid doing pay for play. Now, I know that fundraising is, of course, a concern. There is not infinite money, and I know that a lot of the organizations on this call are working with limited budgets. I will say we are going to talk about that at the summit. We are going to have Young Voices CEO Casey Given, who is one of the very best fundraisers in the non-profit movement in the world, who is going to be there to talk about this and answer a lot of questions about this. So we want to effectively encourage you that there are lots of ways to raise money and be financially sustainable without doing pay for play, without selling out, without just being a spokesperson for some corporate PR firm. And hopefully that will allow you to trust the process. So I alluded to this already. The way that our organizations, all of them, non-profits in the liberty movement, should and do work is that we do things that people like and then they donate to us. They may be individuals, they may be corporations, they may be foundations that have given us grants, whoever it is. Um, we do things because we believe in them, because they align with our mission statement, and then people donate to us so that we can do more of it. That's the way it works. It's not, I'm here and I'm willing to be a mouth for hire. I'm willing to pay whoever, I'm willing to, do whatever whoever pays, whoever has the highest bid wants me to do. So once you've done this, this is your foundation that then you're building all your campaigns with great confidence. You're not ashamed of anything you're doing. Anyone who asks you any questions, there's any doubts creep in, you can say, well, we are doing everything according to our code of ethics. This is what we're doing, and we are proud of it. Okay, jumping to another little section on crisis comms. When things go wrong, how should we react? How should we prepare to avoid things going wrong to make ourselves more resilient? So the first thing to say is never ever make emotional decisions. Be cool, calm, and collected. You might look at this and think, well, yes, of course, but it's very easy, very, very easy to slip into emotional decision making if it feels like you're in a crisis. If it feels like someone has published a hit piece on you that's going to change things, if someone's attacking you, if you're getting a pile on social media, whatever it might be, take a step back. It's never as bad as it seems in the moment. Be cool, calm, and collected. So before you actually discuss what's a good decision and what's a bad decision, think about the way you're making the decisions. Are you reacting or are you actually plotting a sensible way forward? Then the first thing to do, if you're once you've made yourself cool, calm, and collected, if you're in some kind of crisis situation, is retreat to a safe corner. So hopefully, over the course of the next few months, if you don't have already, you will be building lots of secure relationships with effectively friendly journalists who are on your side and who are sympathetic to the things you are trying to do in the world. A crisis situation is when you call them all up and you call in all your favors and you say whatever you say to people that what's happening and that you need help very openly, and they will be willing to help you because you've helped them in the past. And that's how you build and strengthen that relationship. So, first thing, don't react emotionally, get yourself cool, calm, and collected, and then work out who your allies are. Surround yourself with people who can help you. And then, of course, you can foster as much positive press as you can to drown out any negative press. So it's important to think very carefully when you're in a crisis situation about how severe it actually is. As I say, it always seems worse in the moment than it actually is when you look back on it a month or 2 months later. So in most cases, in 95% of cases, the best thing to do is to sit it out, to not react at all, to just wait and see what happens. We've had plenty of hit pieces in our time at Young Voices. I'm sure your organizations will have had them as well over the years. A hit piece, most of the time, is not a crisis in itself. It's unpleasant, it's worrying, but the best thing to do can be to just wait. Just wait for the noise to die down, and then you can get back to doing what you do best, assess any damage, and most of the time, there is basically none. In fact, sometimes it can be helpful. I mean, there was one example where I think it was Australian radio, the Australian public radio station on ABC, did some kind of segment on Young Voices, and it ended up being they tried to criticize us basically, but it ended up being quite complimentary. It ended up explaining in a really good way all the things we were doing and all the great ways we were contributing to the liberty movement, to the extent that our CEO, Casey Given, used that to raise more money. And he put that very proudly in newsletters and emails that were sent out to donors and say, like, hey, even the people who hate us are actually describing what we do in a really interesting way, in a really compelling way, and making us sound like we're really powerful and influential. So if you want to contribute to that, you should. So quite often you can flip things on their heads. Hit pieces are very often not worth the paper they're written on, to be honest. Even if it is a genuine criticism that hurts a bit, sit it out most of the time, unless it is really serious, unless there is something else that is causing you to worry, in which case you may need to do one of those things. You may need to respond. If, for example, there is some negative press because you made a mistake, you did something genuinely wrong that you shouldn't have done, then it may be appropriate to respond to that so that people don't keep bringing it up, so the story does not keep dragging on. This might be a good opportunity for a press release, for example. If you made a mistake, own up to it, explain why it happened, and explain why it won't happen again. Don't get into the weeds. Don't write a long philosophical, musing on life. Short, sharp. Here's what happened. We're sorry. Here's what we're doing to make sure that doesn't happen again. The end. Short, sharp press release, and then move on. Don't keep getting dragged into the conversation. Almost certainly there will be people, especially on social media, who keep trying to drag you into the conversation. Don't get dragged into it. If you're going to respond, if you really feel the need to respond, respond once, and then that's it. Own up to your mistakes, and otherwise be bold and cheerful, as I've put it on the slide, in your ordinary work. If anyone mentions it, if you need to, you can direct them to your existing response, which address the issue, or you can just ignore it and continue going on with your life. So effectively, this is similar to the one above. It's just a quick response so that we can then sit it out, which is the ideal outcome. If things are really severe, and to be honest, this is very, very rare, I don't recall ever really seeing it in recent history in the liberty movement, but if something is really, really severe and it just won't go away, it's just this negative press keeps coming back. Not that people keep mentioning it on social media because they will, that's just the nature of life, but it really is obstructing your work. It really is making it difficult to actually do the things you want to do. Then you might want to try the drown it out strategy. This is where you're going to really call on those close journalist relationships. Any articles you have that you're working on, that you're considering pitching, now is the time. Get them all out. Get as many positive media hits as you possibly can so that when people are looking for things about your organization, they see the positive stuff, not the negative. They see that you are unbothered by the attack that is happening on you. And then when the noise has died down, which it always does, even if it takes a bit longer, it will get quieter, it will get easier. Then you can evaluate with your cool, calm head on how to proceed. You can say, okay, what happened there? What caused that? How can we avoid that in the future? Of course. But then if it was really that severe, what damage was done? Do a bit of a damage assessment. What happened there? Do we need to fix anything? Do we need to, repair ourselves before we're ready to continue to go back to how we were before and continue doing what we do and running our programs? But this is really very rare that it comes up. I can't emphasize enough. I mean, you will have hit pieces. Most of the time, they either don't matter at all or they can be used for your benefit, as I say. So this is really for an extreme situation, which I don't expect that anyone on this call will have to confront during their career, realistically. So I certainly don't want you to worry about that. It's very much just in case. And final section on artificial intelligence. The first thing to say with AI is be careful. We are dealing with the media industry, we are dealing with journalists who sadly are not as enthusiastic about technology and innovation as we are for the most part. So you want to be extra, extra careful. Of course, that doesn't mean you should be a Luddite, old-fashioned, and refusing to engage with any of the new technology. There are plenty of tools that can and do help you to make your work better, to make your work easier, and you should certainly use them. But there are clear lines you should draw about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. And this might also link to another section we were talking about earlier, which is your code of ethics. You may want to put in your code of ethics how you use or how you won't use AI so that anyone looking at your content, looking at your output, can be confident in the human generated nature of it, or can at least be confident in your principles and the fact that you are not hiding, you're not blurring the lines, you're not trying to trick someone. You are very clear about this is what we do and this is what we don't do. So the reason to be so careful is because many media outlets are very, very sensitive to this. I have seen it plenty of times. I have worked with writers on articles where they have been accused by an editor at a media outlet of writing the article with AI, and they didn't. And I know they didn't because I worked with them on it, and I saw the first drafts, and I saw how it evolved into this current draft, and I wrote bits of it myself. I know that it wasn't AI. I'm 100% sure. And yet, the editor at the media outlet has used whatever cheap tool they've used, like Zero GPT or something else with a very high error rate, and they've come to the conclusion that it is AI generated, and so they are accusing you of that. Even when you do everything right, there is still a risk above zero of that happening. So there's a couple of things to learn from that. Firstly, we want to be really confident. We want to be able to say with 100% confidence in every situation, we did not use AI in any improper way for this task, so that you can deal with those situations as effectively as possible. And then, of course, you want to be sensitive generally. You don't want to get into an argument with a journalist if they've got that into their head. The best situation is to say, look, I didn't use AI. Here's my proof. You can show them early documents with drafts or whatever to try to prove it to them. However, I completely understand that you're not interested in this article. That's okay. I will take it elsewhere. I hope we can work together in future. You maintain that friendly, cheerful tone. You keep that relationship solid so that the editor maybe starts to doubt a little bit how confident they are that you used AI because would you have reacted that way? But of course, when it comes to your own processes, you want to be really clear about what you will and won't do. Don't try to get one over on an editor. These are the gatekeepers of the media. They are the people you need to be on your side if you want to build opinion campaigns. If you screw one of them over and they blacklist you or they get annoyed with you, that will have consequences more broadly for your media strategy and your media relationships because journalists talk to each other. They will tell each other about, oh, avoid that person or that organization can't be trusted, and that can have real, real consequences. I have seen it happen to people. It's a very, very bad idea to try to push the limits with this. I would strongly suggest playing it safe, being extra cautious when it comes to the use of AI in anything that involves pitching. And even when there are no gatekeepers, even when you are posting videos on social media, for example, you want to be careful with the audience you are building up because the audiences can be pretty sensitive to it as well. If an audience, if people follow you on social media, for example, because they think you've got something interesting to say, and then they notice that some of your content is AI generated, people can react badly to that, rationally or not. People feel tricked. They feel they've been misled. And so it may be that you want to incorporate some AI in a way that is constructive. It may be you want to make a joke that involves, making a picture of a politician doing a funny thing or whatever it might be. That kind of thing is absolutely fine. Of course, if it's obvious that it's AI, then people don't feel tricked. You don't have that problem. There will, of course, be lots of audiences. If you're speaking to a tech savvy, innovation friendly audience, they will just not care if you use AI or not. But you do at the very least need to be mindful. And we will, of course, go over this kind of thing at the summit as well, thinking about who your audience is. Whether it's the audience themselves on social media or whether it's an editor or a producer you're pitching to, thinking about what they're going to think. How are they going to react if they learn that I've used AI to generate the content I'm sending to them? What will they think of that? If they are going to think badly about it, it's probably best to play it safe and think, okay, I will just spend a bit more time writing a pitch myself rather than writing it with AI, so that I can be safe and preserve that relationship and not put anything at unnecessary risks. Of course, there are lots of uses for the free and very cheap AI tools that are out there, more than just writing articles or writing content. There is a link in the slides, which I would encourage you to click, which is a list effectively of AI tools specifically for communications teams. And I would encourage going through it and seeing how you can use AI tools for your internal processes, which of course you don't need to run by anyone other than maybe your colleagues. Um, so that can make things more efficient, that can make things easier, that can make you feel more confident in your work. When it comes to the use of AI for generating content, though, I think you should have clear guidelines that would, as I say, be a good idea to put them in your code of ethics. There are, of course, lots of things you can and should do with AI. For example, brainstorming ideas. AI can be very good for coming up with general directions. You shouldn't rely on it, but to ignite your passion, to get you going on a topic you're struggling with, it can be a good starting point. My advice for using AI, not necessarily a rule, but advice would be have a clear endpoint in mind first. So I think a recipe for using it badly for the comms process that we're talking about would be to go in open-ended and say, I want to do a campaign on this, ChatGPT, how do I do that? Help me with that. Because then it's not really designed to answer that kind of question. It's very open-ended, it's very generic. If you go in instead with a very specific aim, for example, I'm starting a campaign on the Digital Markets Act. I've got my takes in buckets, if you remember that from our campaigns webinar. I've got one on privacy of data, and I've got one on overregulation harming innovation, but I need a third bucket, and I just can't think which one will be best. What do you advise? That kind of thing. That can be really useful because then it can open up avenues. It can say, competition with China, and you might think, oh, I hadn't actually thought of that angle, but that actually works really well with these hits I was planning, and so on. So you use AI earlier in the process to help generate your ideas rather than relying on it to actually create any content. And then, of course, for internal processes, it's totally up to you how you use them. I would suggest clicking on the link. There are lots of good suggestions in there. Using it for meeting, recording, and transcribing. I know some people use tools like Otter and Fireflies, for example. That kind of thing can be very useful, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But you should, of course, have clear guidelines about what you won't do with AI. This is the most important part. I would strongly advise never passing off AI writing as your own, for all those reasons that we've just been discussing in the past few minutes, that it can damage your relationship with journalists in so many different ways. I would also put translation in that category. I would say using AI to translate a piece translate an article, some text from one language to another is effectively the same kind of thing. And I'll emphasize again, you should be really confident in being able to say to anyone who asks that we don't use AI to generate content, or to generate written content at the very least. Don't you? It is not worth putting your valuable relationships that you've worked so hard to build at risk for the sake of a little bit of time saving, in order to use an AI tool. We are trying to make you guys as good as you possibly can be at all of these important PR skills to the extent that really, at least with the current crop of AI technology, hopefully what you can write is better than what most of the AI can write anyway, unless you're going to spend a really long time crafting a really long and beautiful prompt, in which case you haven't saved any time anyway. You might as well just write the thing yourself. So the disclaimer here is at Young Voices, we are very much enthusiastic. I don't want you to think that we are some kind of anti-innovation, that we're saying, oh, well, the old ways are best and you must stick to the old traditional methods. We are not saying that at all. We are saying purely pragmatically, for the sake of preserving your relationships, for the sake of building a long-term, sustainable communications strategy for your organizations, you have got to be careful with the way you use AI because it can backfire so easily. Even in the whatever it is, 2 or 3 years since ChatGPT has been commonplace, I've seen so many people make this mistake. I would urge you not to make this mistake. It's an unforced error. It's not worth the benefit. It is worth spending the time to set some rules like this to say this is what we're willing to do and this is what we're not willing to do with AI so that you can be really clear and there is no doubt among anyone on your staff, any of your colleagues, any of the editors you work with, nothing. No one has any doubt about the veracity, the authenticity of your content and your campaigns. Okay, those are the 4 things I wanted to go over today. Before I open it up to any questions, I want to run through a checklist of things that we need you guys to prepare before the summit. So there's not too much here. Hopefully, it's things you already know about for the most part. But there is one new element, which is this one. We need you to bring your organization's mission statement to the summit. Your mission statement, if you don't know, is a very short, simple statement of what your organization is for. What is it trying to achieve in the world? If you don't know what it is, ask your manager, ask your boss. They will certainly have it. Just in case your organization doesn't have one, please write one so that you can bring it to the summit to summarize what the point of your organization is. It doesn't have to be perfect. It will be the starting point for some of the very first early stage exercises we will do on the first day of the summit. So please make sure you bring a mission statement. Ideally, send it to me beforehand with your assignments. So you will remember, hopefully, from our previous webinars that at the end of each webinar, I gave you a little assignment. This one was from number 2, Core Media Skills, to edit this paragraph. And I've included links to the original slideshows here, but the whole assignment is here as well. And of course, we have other assignments from the social media one. There was one to make a short video reel of 30 to 60 seconds. And from the campaigns webinar, number 4, there was one to plan an opinion campaign, if you remember, with that big green table on the slide. And finally, from the last one, number 5, there was testing out a piece of PR software and generating an example report using some media hits to practice getting those reach numbers from some media hits. So all of these things should be done by the 10th of November. Please send me all of your assignments, plus your media hit if you possibly can, by the 10th of November. That will give us enough time to make sure that we've got everything we need from everyone and we are ready to go. The reason we're doing it this way is because we want to make sure that we get the maximum value out of our time together. These 3 days that we spend together during the summit are going to be by far the most important 3 days of the whole Liberty Comms Lab because that is the time where we will get to work with you directly. We will develop that strategic plan and hopefully make you guys ready to actually go out there and genuinely move the needle for Liberty through your comms work. So please get everything to me by the 10th of November. You all have my email address. If you have any questions or difficulties with it, of course, let me know and I'll be happy to help. But hopefully these assignments won't take too long. They're relatively simple and you should be able to achieve that deadline quite easily. So in terms of next steps, of course, we have finished the webinars. This is the last one of the 6. The next step is the summit from the 20th to the 22nd of November, as you know, in Schaffhausen in Switzerland. We are very much looking forward to seeing you. The plans are coming together. In December, as we will discuss, of course, in more detail at the summit, we will work on your final strategic plan so that you know exactly what you're doing in the new year. And then for those 6 months in the new year, we will be your consultants to make sure you achieve that strategic plan, to make sure you get the maximum potential out of everything you are doing in comms. So that is everything I needed to tell you today, and we have ample time for questions. I told you it was going to be short and I kept my promise. So now is the time if you have anything to ask about anything I've said today, or about any of the assignments, or anything that's due on the 10th of November, or about the summit, or indeed about anything else. If you want to ask me about the weather here in London, that is a valid question as well. So I'll leave it up to you. Feel free to unmute yourself or to put it in the chat. If not, then we can end very early. None from me, says Jacob. Thanks, Jacob. Okay, give a couple more seconds. Going once, going twice, as my colleague Aaron says. Okay, good stuff. Well, I look forward to receiving your assignments and your mission statements by email by the 10th of November. And yeah, let's stay in touch over the next few weeks as the summit gets nearer. We are very much looking forward to seeing you all. It's going to be great. Thank you for your time as always, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you. Bye bye.